So, Chad, can you monitor the chat? I can't see it for some reason.
Yep, I will.
Thanks.
So, hello everyone. I think I can start the introduction. I'll wait just a few seconds to let people get into the room. You're all connected from different places. And it's nice anyway to be here all together from different continents. So I think I can start introducing this session on designing technology to support self-regulated learning. Of course, this is a crucial, pivotal topic. In my view, I've been actually researching on self-regulated learning in an international project, and actually yesterday you had a keynote from Ilona Buchem from Germany, and she was the coordinator of such a European project. So I'm very much eager to learn more from Jennifer Murphy and Chad Udall. Of course, self-regulated learning is a process by which learners organize and assess their own learning experiences and prove to be very successful. But we need to learn more about strategies related to this way of learning, and of course there's science, there's research behind that, and we really thank Jennifer and Chad for being with us today. Jennifer Murphy, she's CEO at Quantum Improvements Consulting, and Chad Udall, managing partner, new product strategy and development at Float. So the floor is all yours. I'll alert you when we have 5 minutes left, and I really recommend the audience to start thinking about possible questions in the chat or through the Q&A session. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jennifer. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that that kind introduction. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the Learning Ideas Conference 2021. Wish we could all be there in person, but I'm very glad to have you all with us this morning. So I'm here with my colleague Chad Udall. We're going to be talking about designing technology for self-regulated learning. If I can get the slides to work. Okay, a little bit about us. I'll introduce myself real quick. I'm the founder and CEO of a small business in Orlando, Florida. We do a lot of work in terms of everything that happens before you develop a training solution and everything that happens after that. So designing front-end analysis, doing design mock-up, stuff like that to figure out what needs to be trained, and then evaluating learning solutions to make sure that they actually do what they're supposed to. So I manage a team of learning scientists, human factors engineers, and like I said, in the Orlando area. And we do a lot of work in this area with Chad, who is our colleague. Chad, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jen. Very happy to be here. Have not had the opportunity to speak with the Learning Ideas Conference before, but I'm glad to reach such a global audience, and good afternoon, everybody. I have had the fortunate opportunity to work with Jen and her company for a number of years. We've built a variety of learning technology platforms together, some of which are obviously self-regulated learning in nature, follow those types of models and design patterns. And so we do have some level of firsthand knowledge and expertise and experience in this area. And I'm very happy to be here today to share some of those experiences with the audience. Dr. Murphy here has a lot of great insights and has served as a tremendous guide to us as we've been designing and developing our platforms out at Float. My team is primarily focused around technology design as well as development. So we build a lot of content management systems and learning management and learning experience platforms and mobile apps that go along with those. And the experts at QIC help us shape how those applications function for the end learner as well as the organizations that implement them. So back to you, Jen.
Thanks. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're going to talk a little bit about self-regulated learning itself as a concept, how it differs from some related concepts and how it's similar. We're going to talk about the challenges that are associated with it based on some research. We're going to talk about how to support it and what you can use to facilitate this process, and why technology is a particularly useful tool when it comes to self-regulated learning and making sure it happens, and really what you should be looking for in terms of technology solutions and learning solutions that support a self-regulated learning process. And we're going to talk about it in the context of the work that we've done together to develop one of a couple of self-regulated learning platforms, but also more broadly in terms of a variety of technologies. So you have a good flavor for all sorts of different ways that you can support this process. So you might be asking yourself, why do I care about this today? Well, if we've learned anything from 2020, it's how to work remotely, or a lot of us have anyway. And so when we're all on our own, working out of our house or wherever we happen to be, like, you're self-regulating a lot. You're getting yourself up in the morning and going to work at your desk in your house. And pretty much every aspect of your life that you depended on an external schedule for, you're actually self-regulating these days. And so that goes for your learning process as well. So because we are so distributed and so responsible for our own processes across the board, this is a very timely topic, and that's why we're talking about it today. Okay, so you're here at a learning conference, and that insinuates that you care about learning. It's probably part of your job. And for those of us who have devoted the better part of our careers to understanding and facilitating people learning new skills and new concepts, the idea of learning yourself is probably not foreign to you. And so if I asked you how you feel about learning, you would probably say that you're pretty passionate about it. You're like, I learn all the time. And a lot of my friends, and myself included, and Chad certainly, we take a lot of time out of our day to learn new things. But have you ever really thought about how you learn stuff? Probably not. Usually I know Chad this weekend had to learn how to fix a faucet. So he watched some YouTube videos and read some stuff and figured out how to do it. I don't know the extent to which he actually thought metacognitively about the process that he used to learn this. If I'm trying to cook something new, or if I'm trying to do something around my apartment, for example, like, I don't spend that much time thinking about learning. I just do it. But there is a lot that goes into the process of learning, as we all know. And that kind of gets to where self-regulated learning is different than just the normal process of learning that you might engage in. So what is self-regulated learning? So this is a way of talking about how you manage your own learning process. And it's a framework, so it's not really a theory, but it's a way of thinking and talking about it. And that's important because when we talk about self-regulated learning and other constructs that we talk about in experimental research, there's a difference between talking about a framework and something that, is reflected in your cognitive processes. So this is a way of talking about it, really is what it is. And it doesn't happen all the time. It can't really happen all the time. But if you manage your own learning process, then that's the process of self-regulated learning. It can happen in certain situations, like I said, and not always. There are some conditions that have to be met. So for example, you have to be an active participant in the learning process. Like, you have to, willfully learn the things that you end up learning. And you have to be in control of certain aspects of it. Specifically, the planning and the assessment, the evaluation, and identifying learning materials, all of these things, like, you have to be able to be in control of it. If you're in a course where everything is dictated to you, then it's much less likely that you're going to be able to be in control of it. You actually have to be motivated to learn. I can put you in a class, and if you don't care, then you're not going to learn anything. Similarly, I can give you all sorts of life experiences, but if you don't care, you're not going to learn. So you have to actually want to learn. You have to be able to think metacognitively about your learning process. And this is important when we talk about adult learning versus like K through 12 education, for example, because there are some people who are not capable of thinking about the way that they learn yet because their brains might not be developed enough yet. So if you ask your 3-year-old, how did you learn where you live? They might not be able to tell you because they don't have the vocabulary for that, and they're not developed enough to be able to reflect on their own learning process. So that's a condition that has to be met. And you also have to have a standard for evaluation. I have to know what good looks like. And I specifically have to know what it means to have mastered the skill that I'm trying to develop. And really, what would that look like when I'm done? So those are the conditions that you need for self-regulated learning. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about self-directed learning and self-regulated learning, and in the work that Chad and I have done together, these two terms get conflated a lot. So I would like to take a moment to differentiate between self-directed and self-regulated learning. Self-directed learning is probably something more along the lines of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to figure something out, you identify what it is that you have to learn, you figure out how you're going to learn it, find the content, and then manage your process from there. So you are actually in charge of figuring out what it is that you want to learn. In a lot of cases, when we're talking about self-regulated learning, this is more relevant to what we do in a corporate setting, because the things that you have to learn aren't really up to you in a lot of cases, but how you learn it is up to you. So that's why these two are different and important. And when we're talking about learning technology, this really gets to the difference between what a learning management system does, which is potentially support a self-regulated learning process, and an LXP, which would support more of a self-directed learning process. And the difference between the two is who's in charge of figuring out what content it is that we're looking for, right? So in a learning experience provider, the student or the learner has a little bit more control over what it is that they're looking for and where the content comes from. But in a traditional LMS, you still have somebody telling you what it is that you need to learn. And so that's why these distinctions are important. It's more than just a little bit of semantics. But I want to talk about it in context of experiences that I've had and Chad's had. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience as a self-regulated learning person. And this is something I feel like a lot of people can relate to. So because I'm a huge nerd, I was in school for basically ever. And in this situation here, this example, I'm taking a class as part of my degree to get my PhD. So I know what I have to learn. I'm not really in charge of the syllabus. I'm not really in charge of the curriculum. I'm not in charge of the concepts I have to master before the end of the class. However, I am responsible for how I ingest, process, and deal with this information. So that part is a self-regulated part, right? So what I do in this case, because I'm highly motivated to get an A, which is important, like being motivated is a precursor for this, I will figure out what it is that I have to learn. I'll figure out how I'm going to do it. I'm going to give myself a schedule. I'm going to make myself available to participate in the activities that I've identified for myself. In this case, I'm doing homework. I'm in a study group. I'm studying for exams. I'm doing all of the things that I've set out at the beginning of the semester to make sure that I, have the greatest chance of success in this class. After every test that I take, I talk to my professor and figure out what I've done wrong, what I can do better, and I evaluate how I'm doing as I'm going through the class. So this is an example of self-regulated learning. So you'll see I'm not really in charge of the content all the time. I can obviously look for additional information. If I don't understand something, I can go online and research it. I can pull up a YouTube video or whatever. But in this case, I am in charge of my process, and that's really what's important here. So I'm going to get Chad to talk a little bit about his experience as more of a self-directed learner.
Great. Yeah. So as opposed to Jen's situation where she was really in a specific domain, the study of psychology, and decided that she wanted to progress along this degree path and work within the subject matter and curriculum that the organization or the university had put out forth for her, which is great. Obviously, gives you a tremendous toolkit that you can pull from. In my case, from a hobbyist perspective, I'm interested in music creation, music curation, music production, so on and so forth. And as part of my journey within that, I chose that I wanted to learn how to use a variety of different electronic music instruments and synthesizers and production techniques and so on and so forth. I could spend a tremendous amount of time in this environment just playing about, tinkering, and so on and so forth, but I really wouldn't get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And because I'm also a huge nerd in my own right, I want to learn how to use it. I'm the type of person that reads the manual, for example. I'm the type of person that watches the YouTube video and tries to mimic or model the types of things that I'm doing based off of professionals or experts in this particular space that I'm seeing. And I'm also the type of person that is not afraid to put my material out there, have people give me feedback, and then listen to that feedback to modify what I'm doing in the hopes of getting better, right? And so it's more than just tinkering. It's a pursuit of gaining some level of expertise with ultimately having a goal of releasing, hopefully listenable music here, maybe even by the end of the year. So I put some bounds on it myself that is probably a little bit more direct and specific than many people that are just kind of foundering about. And in your answer your question, Jen, when I was looking this weekend to figure out how to fix the faucet that was leaking in my home, I don't think I learned a whole lot other than maybe I could do it better without looking at a YouTube video next time. But I'm not really looking at making this a pursuit where I'm trying to become an expert. It took me virtually all day to replace this faucet. Maybe next time I would cut the time in half, and I would need less trips to the hardware store to buy the supplies that I didn't buy on the first time. So I have probably learned a couple things, but this isn't something that I'm going to try and like make a career change or do something different based off of it. Whereas in the case of this music, while I'm not certainly going to probably quit my day job anytime soon, I am looking to get better at it.
So you're saying you basically are not going to ever be able to fix any of my faucets if they leak?
Probably not. Call a professional.
It's just, what are you good for? Okay, well, thank you for that example. But I think at this point, you can see the difference between these two constructs. They're very closely related, but they are slightly different. So let's talk about the research behind self-regulated learning. So when we talk about that broadly as a framework, within that construct, there are several models that are discussed in the literature. There's about 6 main ones. And I like to include references in my presentation. So if you look at the slide here, there's a link to a review paper which summarizes a lot of the research in this area. And if you're just looking at getting started at reading some of this stuff, that's a good place to start. So like I said, there are a few good models of self-regulated learning out there. They all can be boiled down to 3 phases, really. So there are 3 primary types of tasks that people engage in this process. The first is preparation, so getting ready to do something. And if you have any sort of a good habit or organizational strategy or anything like that in your life, you realize the importance of careful planning. And so there's some time that you have to devote to planning out how this is going to go. This involves what we call a task analysis. So figuring out what are the steps you have to take to master the skill that you're trying to do, planning out how you're going to accomplish those things, and setting some goals for yourself. And then once that plan is established, we talk about the performance phase. And at this point, you're executing your plan, basically. So whatever it is in terms of finding resources for yourself, evaluating yourself, and executing all of the things that you establish for yourself in the planning phase, that's the performance phase. And then finally, there's an appraisal component as well. And this goes throughout the entire process, but also more importantly, at the end of the entire process, is figuring out when you get to done. Right. So this ties into the goal phase as well. So if you've got specific goals, once you've achieved those goals, then you know that you've accomplished the thing that you're trying to do. Otherwise, you could just keep spinning on something forever and ever. Right. But evaluating your performance as you go. But then there's also this metacognitive aspect where you're taking a step back and saying, okay, how am I doing at learning this? Am I achieving my goals in the way that I want to? And is there anything I need to tweak in my process as I go to make sure that I'm doing this as efficiently and effectively as possible? So those are basically the three phases of self-regulated learning that we can talk to. Now, the interesting thing about self-regulated learning is that while there have been a lot of people that discuss it from a hypothetical perspective, a lot of the research out there says that this is just not something that people tend to do very well on their own without a lot of support. And if you think yourself about like the past few things you've had to learn how to do, you probably haven't done this either because most people don't. That's what the research suggests. And that's why leveraging technology for this process is actually a really good idea. And if you have any sort of routines in your life or any sort of objectives that you're trying to make across the board, then you might have noticed that there's probably an app on your phone that helps you do that. Like you might have a Todoist or like any other sort of to-do organizer like Wunderlist or something like that. You might have an Outlook calendar that you use to organize what happens during your day. So these organizational tools that you might be familiar with in your everyday life are the sorts of things that you might want to think about implementing for a self-regulated learning process as well. And so that's, you know, the extent to which you apply that in your regular life could help you when we're talking about learning, your learning process also. So what would this look like? So in this case, we have examples of what a self-regulated learning process might look like at work. So let's just say that I'm a project manager and my boss says, all right, here's some new software that I need you to learn. And because you're managing other people, like you take this very seriously. If I don't understand it, there's no way I'm going to be able to get anybody else to. So let's figure out how to do that. So if I were in the preparation phase as somebody who's trying to learn how to use the software, what would I do? So first of all, I'd give myself a deadline. Say, okay, well, the rest of this crew has to be able to do it by the end of the month. So I have that much time to figure out how to do it so I can teach somebody else. And then getting all the information you need together. So, okay, maybe I need the manual, maybe I need to find Clippy in the software somewhere. I need to go on Reddit and figure out what other people have said breaks all the time. So there's probably, some information gathering that you might have to do. And then making sure you have time to do this. If you are managing other people, your day is probably already booked. So how do you find the time and schedule it so that you can do something like this? So once you have a game plan set, you would move into the performance phase. And this is where I'm actively learning how to use this software. So I might watch tutorial videos. They might have come with the software, or I might find them on YouTube or wherever. But doing this according to the schedule that I've set for myself. So if I say, okay, I've got an hour a day for the next 3 weeks to figure this out, then you do that according to this schedule. You would practice using the software, and that gets to, applying the skills that you're learning in real time. And then if you have questions or things aren't clear, figuring out the answers yourself. So finding where that information is that you need. Now, when you think you're done, or when you've executed your plan, you would deal with the appraisal aspect, which is making sure you know what you're talking about, like whatever that looks like. So you might have a sample project that you're like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this project management software, and then I'm going to test it out on one of our projects and see if it works, right? See if I understand enough about this to be able to do the things that I need to do with it so I can manage other people doing it. And that's part of the appraisal phase. So giving yourself a test and passing it. And then taking a step back and saying, okay, in that process, what could I have done better? Did I actually learn all the things I'm supposed to? If not, what do I need to do next time to make sure that I'm in a better position to do this? Because it's not the last time this is going to happen. So that's a good example of what a self-regulated learning process would look like in a work setting if you were trying to learn something. Okay, so why is this hard? So people, like I said, there's a lot of research that suggests that people don't do this very well. And some of the reasons why are, one, a lot of people don't understand how learning works. To be able to reflect on your learning process, you kind of have to know how you learn in the first place. So something that instructional designers and other people like us might take for granted because it's our job, but most people are not instructional designers, and so you probably don't know how that goes. You might not know what sorts of techniques would support a learning process, you probably don't know how to evaluate your own performance. And in fact, humans are broadly terrible at evaluating everything. In fact, if you asked me how far it is from here to the parking lot, I would screw that up because people are even bad at distance estimation. Like, we're broadly bad at evaluating all sorts of stuff. So why would we be good at evaluating our own learning performance? And then thinking about your own learning process, how do you know if you're doing that right? And the bottom line really is that most people are not instructional designers. And this is really the instructional design process applied to yourself. And if you're not one of those people, then this is going to be a really hard thing for you to do. And you're probably not going to do it very well. So even if you do all this stuff, you might not be doing it right. Like, have you learned the lesson that you were supposed to learn from this experience? You might have learned a valuable lesson, but is it the right lesson? And that's really the question that we don't have the answer to. So I'm going to actually turn this over to Chad at this point because he's going to talk about how technology can help with this process.
Thanks, Jen. So as she mentioned earlier, many of us use personal assistants of a variety of types. Maybe they're apps like Todoist or another productivity tool. It may be an intelligent agent like Siri or Google or Alexa or any of the other people that talk to you from the little black boxes that we have littering our homes. But these are all tools that can help you with scheduling. They can certainly help you with reminders to make sure that you participate in the activities and keep you on task, but they don't do some of the things that are vital components that Jen also mentioned, right? So what do I want to get out of this? If I'm going to be learning this project management software, where do I want to be at the end of my learning journey? Do I need to be an expert? Do I just need to be a couple weeks ahead of the other team members that are basically participating and using the software with me? Some of those types of things are also tools that we need to consider in order to help people get along with that part of that journey. Other things like motivation are key, right? So, badging, gamification, and a variety of other motivational tools can be inserted into these tools and technologies in order to help keep learners on task and tracking along with their tools. But they also need evaluative frameworks and tools that help them with understanding the content that's inside of it, right? These can take the forms of very simple summative, quizzes and knowledge checks and things of that nature. But they can also say, at the end of this, I've earned all the badges. I've gotten the certification. I've exhibited some level of mastery, and so on and so forth. And maybe even more importantly, the software has at least once or twice pinged you and said, are you learning? What are you learning? Jen, what are you learning here? Are you learning things? Are you learning good stuff? Are you learning what you wanted to learn? And those are the types of things that we don't really think of when we operate in these circles ourselves, right? If we are left to our own devices, not technical devices, but like our own mental models and things of that nature, we won't reflect on what it is that we've done, and we'll just move on to the next thing. Have we actually gotten better? We don't really necessarily know. So let's take a look at some of these designs. Okay, Jen? As you move into a self-regulated model, I think that one of the things that we mentioned at the previous earlier part of the phase is that self-regulated versus self-directed. If you get to choose the topics and areas that you're going to be studying, right, that pushes us towards this more SRL type of model as opposed to the SDL, self-directed. So a learning management system, again, where the domain of knowledge that you're supposed to get, that's very tailored and focused around what your organization wants you to learn, it lends itself to a self-regulated model, something that's more of like an all-you-can-eat buffet that contains a myriad of topics that you as the learner get to choose on, is going to be much more around this SRL type of model. It's flexible, but it's still curated, right? I don't think that we're probably at the point right now where an organization wants their learners to learn about fixing faucets, for example, if they really want them to be learning about project management. So next, please. There also has to be some way for people to understand where they are going inside of the process, right? When have they achieved some level of completion? How are they tracking against their progress? How do I compare against either expectations for people that are going through this type of journey alongside with me, maybe as a cohort? How do I match up against expectations as I gain knowledge inside of this domain? And if nothing else, how will I know when I've achieved some level of success? So milestones, learning paths, completion notifications, and progress checks are necessary in order to allow people to learn more about what they are doing inside of the process. Next, please. we mentioned motivations. We mentioned the rationale for why people might want to get into the system. But a vital part of that is also setting some form of goal. I need to continue these types of activities inside of the system in order to gain fluency or frequency and understanding of the content. We use this in our products that we've been building for government learning. This is a picture here from a product that Float has on the market called SparkLearn. But you'll also see this type of model used very frequently in language learning applications. Like, what's the big one that has the owl as the you mouthed the word. What's the name of that?
Duolingo is what you mean.
Duolingo.
Yeah.
So I used Duolingo, but I also used Drops. And I liked Drops better than Duolingo, mainly because I thought the UI was cuter and prettier and stuff. But these types of goals that you put inside of here, consume this many modules, learn this many words, learn how to do sentence structures in the languages you're learning. These are the vital parts that help people move along that path, right? Next, please. So as we move out of preparation, setting the stage for what it is that you're going to learn, into the performance stage of let's learn these things, let's create some space inside of our brain to store the knowledge that we're going to, you can provide a variety of tools that allow your learners in your audience to take advantage of, I guess, their own motivations and their own mental models on how they like to store knowledge, right? And so note-taking, annotations. If you read a Kindle book on your iPad, for example, and you find yourself to be a frequent highlighter, there are tools in there that obviously allow you to track against the bookmarks and highlights that you've had. You can create snippets, for example, in Audible books. Those are self-regulated learning tools that you are using, maybe unbeknownst to you, but hopefully you're creating those as signposts or waypoints inside of the content as you consume it in order to help you come back to it, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that that is not a hidden feature, not tucked away, and that we make it as low friction for people to engage with as possible. So if you require additional, say, for example, moderation, or you tuck the ability for them to do annotations, not in the content flow, but they have to go to a separate area of the application. This is probably not a good UX. You want to make sure that you're putting those types of tools right into the flow of their activities. And here we've got, again, some work that Float has done, but we also have some friends of ours that have an application out there called Pebble, which allows you to do annotations in ebooks, even inside of a web browser as well. Next, please. All right, the assessment and feedback mechanism. So do I like this content? Did it resonate with me? Is this important to me? These are vital for not just you to track against, but they also are vital tools for the content administrators and the people that are on the other side of the table, making sure that they are providing content that resonates and works for their learners. So we use this all the time in applications that we've built, right? And this is very similar to, in some ways, to a Likert scale, right? It's just level one type of about, did I like this content? And while it doesn't necessarily have a value if you're not doing something with it, but if the system is using that information to then tailor the content back to the learner in order to provide more relevant information and more useful information, or providing signals and guides to the organization itself to create more content like this, this is a great design pattern. This is obviously in use at things like systems like Hulu and Netflix, because they are feeding you content recommendations all the time. If you like this superhero movie, you're probably going to like that superhero movie. And those types of design patterns exist in virtually every single type of user content creation and consumption tool that we use today. Next. All right. So if we want to be able to be in the flow of an activity and learn from others in that activity, we should be able to discuss with them. We should be able to maybe even form communities of practice. We should be able to say, this worked or that didn't work, or how are you doing this, or how I did this was this, like, so that you can share your trials and tribulations, you can share your success, maybe even get some feedback on the work that you're doing in order to get that type of improvement. So I belong to a number of music communities. I post my tracks up there like on the weekend in order to get some form of assessment. And then I learn how to do all kinds of things that I wouldn't have even thought of beforehand, like reusing a mixing technique or a mastering technique or EQ settings in order to make my bass pop a lot better, or whatever else it is that I'm trying to do in that particular instance, right? You need that type of loop. Otherwise, you're just kind of, like I said earlier, tinkering. Next, please. Motivation is key. If you can't stay in the flow and you don't seem to be, wanting to learn what it is that you want to consume, you will inevitably fall off the wagon. You will, pardon me, you will lose engagement, you will lose motivation to finish that program, and you may not ever actually become an actualized learner or expert in that particular domain. Now, we would hope in the case of SRL, because you've chosen the subject matter in the area that you want to learn in, that you already have some inherent motivation, but extrinsic motivation tools don't hurt. And badging and certificates certainly work for my kids. They love it. They like to get trophies when they finish well in a race. They like to get a plaque on the wall that they can hang at the end of a football season or whatever else it is. And learners are in many ways not any bit different. There's some depictions here. We've got an application that is available on the Apple App Store and Google Play, the middle one with the green title bar. It's a application called Sense. That's SEN $E. Very cute name. That is intended to help service members and their families make better financial decisions. So it's financial readiness training. Not the most exciting content. So therefore, motivational tools are really, really key in order to help keep people engaged with it. And then over on the right-hand side, just a shout out to one of my favorite little social network applications called Untapped, which I have motivations to engage with because I like to drink beer. But you get badges for drinking. It combines two of the favorite things, beer and badges, for completing certain types of challenges, as if they're difficult or something like that. But it is a fun way to maintain engagement. And we see this obviously in marketing tools. David Kelly in his session earlier today, he mentioned specifically how marketing uses gaming and gamification in order to increase engagement as a way to gain product knowledge, keep consumers involved, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also a valuable tool to keep learners involved too. Next, please. Performance continues on with the ability to keep people on track via notifications. So the system, if they notice that you're flagging or not engaging, can send you notifications back out saying, hey, it's been a little while. You should probably get back into this. It can also provide you information while you're in the flow of your activity. Maybe it's disruptive. I don't know. It could be, depending on when the push notification comes out. But if you just consumed content yesterday about a particular subject matter, the application may be able to look at your usage pattern and say, hey, what did you think about this? Right? So it's pulling you back in, but it's also even asking you to consider what it was that you learned. Next, please. As we move out of performance into appraisal, this is probably one of the areas I think, Jen, and you probably, I hope you agree, is that where SRL really starts to fall down, because we don't normally think about how well we're doing inside of the process. We certainly are probably more kind to us ourselves on, oh yeah, I totally know how to do this. Absolutely. I'm fine. I got this. I'm an expert, whatever it is. And then you get in front of the class or your employees and you're trying to show them how to use the project management software, and you realize you didn't know or prepare that particular area or question. So we want to make sure that people understand what it is that they're doing, and we want to make sure that they have an ability to see how far along the path they are and how well they've done with the content that's inside of it. Next, please. Maybe a deeper subject, and probably worth a presentation all unto itself, is thinking about how you learn and considering, did I learn something and what was the value of this, is an area that is not really addressed in many softwares at all. Pictured here is actually a product that my company Float built in 2012 called Tapestry, which was intended to be a learning social network where I could share knowledge that I had learned. I could get some level of validation on whether the information that I learned was important or valuable. But more importantly, you could create these goals, and then upon learning or completing that particular goal, you were invited to reflect on why this was important to you, how it changed you, what it modified about your behavior, and how effective you were at learning it. Did it meet your goals? Did it meet your expectations? So on and so forth. And this is just a really, I think, a area ripe for exploration, especially as we build more robust systems powered by AI and powered by engagement by the users inside of the systems. Next, please. And we do have plenty of time for some QA and discussion.
And we have some questions.
Awesome.
So I think I probably am done sharing my screen. Figure out how to stop it. There we go. Okay, Q&A time. So we have a question from Maddie who says that I fully agree with you that feedback is essential. However, sometimes too much of a good thing is not what we want. Um, have you experienced some kind of feedback fatigue from learners? And if so, how do you handle it? So it's actually a really good question. And it goes for not just feedback, but for everything with regard to learning technology and technology broadly. So here's a really good example of how it applies to everything. So think about your smartphone. And the first time you download an app, what is it going to do is an app's going to send you a notification, right? And then if you don't engage with that after a while, it's going to send you another notification. And then after a while, it's going to send you another notification. And sometimes it sends you 15 notifications a day. And then what do is you turn off the notifications because you're like, enough. App developers have gotten smarter about this, and now they usually let you opt in to certain notifications and opt out of them. So are there certain kinds that you want to see? So yes, you certainly would see feedback fatigue in any case. What the right answer is you should be doing some pilot testing with your users to determine the extent to which feedback is actually necessary. A better answer is you should be doing some research the first couple of times you do the course to personalize the extent to which feedback is required, because different people will need different kinds of feedback. So that's a better answer. But realistically, a lot of people don't have the bandwidth to do that. So what I would do in this case is look at what other things other people have done that is similar in the past, and try and find some good examples if you can't. But then always, as you roll things out, make sure that you do get feedback from your learners on them and adjust as necessary or required. And that's really kind of the best you can do. I think there's, especially in L&D, people ask for like hard and fast rules on, 5 of this and 7 of this and 2 weeks of this. And there's really not a hard and fast rule on that. You kind of have to try and see.
I think a thing to tack onto that, Jen, as well, is like there's feedback that the learner is gaining while they're in the flow of that activity, right? Like there's their feedback, the loop that they get in order to help them along their learning journey. And then there's the feedback that the organization itself also gets. And I think that one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that if we are providing that type of feedback expectation or loop that the learner is going to be providing back to the organization, then we as the organization, it behooves us to honor that and to actually make adjustments to that content, or otherwise you're going to lose engagement. You're going to end up unempowering, or I don't know, your learners will lose agency in the process and they will disengage because of that as well. So we want to make sure that if there is that expectation of that loop, that you honor it on both sides.
Sure. And this, I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Please.
No, I was going to go off on a tangent. So.
No, I have lots. Your first of all, thank you for your inspiring presentation. As I said, I have been working on self-regulated learning within this European project, and so I'd like to know from both of you, taking into consideration that from what I understand, you both work in a corporate environment. So what do you think could be the role of higher education and university in supporting the kind of self-regulated learning that you promote and take into consideration, and which way we could find an interaction, a fruitful cooperation between higher education and the corporate area. So of course, taking it as far as self-regulated learning is concerned.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that question because a lot of the experimental research that's been done in self-regulated learning has been done with K through 12. And the reason why that's the case is because there's broadly like more funding for people to do research for kids and how they learn too. And there's a survey that was done, and I forget the authors, and I'm killing myself for doing it, but I forget the authors, but it just came out where they asked a bunch of kids, um, how do you learn? And how do you know how you learn? And where did you learn how to learn? And over half of them had no idea where they learned how to learn. They just like learn, and the strategies that they use to learn, they don't know where they learned them from. They just like learn whatever was presented to them. And I think that really sets the foundation for this. Like I said, people are not inherently good at metacognitive processing broadly. People are not inherently good at thinking about how you learn. This is something you have to do. If you've used an organizational tool or any sort of like project management, anything in your life, this is something you have to learn to do. People are not inherently good at this. So this is a process that you need to be familiar with. I feel like the earlier we can get kids thinking about learning as a process and really doing and managing their own behavior as a process. And there are, at least in the United States, 8,000 things that I wish I had learned how to manage about myself better as a kid. But you just don't, like Chad and I have done a lot of work in the financial literacy area, and that's something that needs to be managed. Like your budget needs to be managed, and that's something that a lot of kids don't learn. So if I think if we can teach kids sooner that there are certain ways of learning that are more effective, there are certain ways of learning that are not more effective, and here's what you need to do, and here's what right looks like, I think that would be immensely helpful. And it's probably the most important thing we could do to help kids out. And that would set them on a path for not just their career, but everything in life so much better.
I also think that
Right.
there are some ways that we could enhance this or make this experience a little bit more available or accessible. The concept of SRL and even SDL, so that learners can learn how they learn and why they learn and why they want to learn, is I feel like because I have 3 kids that are in K through 12 right now, that the way that the educational experience is set up, at least in the United States, is very much from this time period, you do this. From this time period, you do this. And in this grade group, you do this. And in this age group, you do this. In the 4th grade, you're going to learn all the state capitals or whatever else it doesn't encourage kind of a taste testing. It doesn't encourage a buffet approach to content. There is no ability to wiggle or move about. The concept of electives, for example, is only really comes about into grade 9 through 12 in most US school districts. And so until they're essentially 15 years old, the child has no choice in deciding what it is that they want to learn. Now, of course, there are fundamentals you need to know, right? Long division, multiplication, times tables, all those types of things, etc. But there's a whole host of opportunities in terms of STEM and augmentation content and things like that, where we don't provide any variance on what it is that people can learn. And if we do, they're always in these kind of loosey-goosey, floofy clubs with no sense of real appraisal or any sort of achievement outside of the fact that you maybe get a participation trophy at the end of it, right? So things like robotics clubs and things like art competitions and shows, those are the kind of the bread and butter from my perspective of being able to provide some framework for SRL for younger kids. But we don't really look at those as educational opportunities. They're always like extracurriculars, and they're the first things that get funding cut. So that's a real, I think, shortcoming that I see as a parent directly in the flow of that activity right now.
Yeah, one other thing that I think we could really encourage, and I feel like needs to be encouraged kind of across the board, is how to research and how to find answers to your own questions. I remember I was at another conference a couple of years ago where they were talking about K through 12 and the problem of cheating, and how cheating on tests is like something that a lot of the public schools here in the US feel the need to address. And we were like, well, what do you mean by cheating? They're like, well, they're taking a test, but then, because they're all distributed, they're going on Google and finding the answers. Or if they don't know something, they're looking it up. And I actually like irritated some people when I said this, but I was like, well, that's what I do when I don't know the answer to a question.
Mhm.
And why are we forcing them to learn how to operate and to manage information in a way that's incongruous with the way that they would actually live their lives? Like, I don't have everything in the world up here. There are skills that I have to apply, and we can test those and make sure that I understand this process. But doing the research to figure out how to answer your own questions is part of adulting. And it's really something that we should encourage in kids. And part of that is working collaboratively too. A lot of things are set up to be competitive, and being competitive is something that you do have to do in life. And there you need to understand how to be able to compete, but to be able to work collaboratively is not really something that we encourage a lot, particularly well either. But that's a great way to learn stuff. And I feel like those opportunities are things that we need to learn how to encourage, but how to work on a team, how to work together, how to learn from other people, how to fact check, how to make sure that the information that you're getting is good, and really how to be a good consumer of information is something that I feel like would help kids out a lot.
So there's a question in the chat. I think actually that Jen already answered the question, but maybe we could reflect a little bit more on this concept. Jenny is asking, is SRL related to the age of the learner? Actually, from what you said, Jen, from a certain point of view, yes, but maybe not. What do you think?
So not age and years
Yeah.
necessarily, but more cognitive ability, and really the maturity of cognitive processing. And like I said before, it really speaks to kids and teaching kids how to be more metacognitively aware and think about their own learning process. And there's no reason to think that somebody couldn't learn how to do that earlier in their life. It's just that you're not born that way, and you're not born thinking about the way that you think. And it's something that you need to learn how to do. So you tend to see people later in life do this stuff better because not because they're older, but because they've had that experience and that education on how to do it. So I think that's really the difference there. If it were related to age, now sure, like I guess my grandparents would sit back and be like, "Oh yes, I remember back at the." So I guess like there's that stereotype too, but I don't imagine that like as I increasingly age, I'm going to get better at it.
Yeah, in fact, in my view, and also according to the research we carried out, especially within this group that I was mentioning, the idea is to support reflection on self-regulated learning throughout any level of instruction. In particular, we were working on the higher education area. But anyway, as you said, the sooner the better. But the most important thing is to acquire that way of thinking, which is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that Luca Torri is already there. Hello, Luca. We your session is scheduled at 5:30. I don't know if there are other questions. I think that I cannot see other questions in the chat. I have one more question for you, Jan and Chad. In your opinion, you told us about the need for research, the need to, of course, acquire data information related to the impact of self-regulated learning. So did you develop specific tools, or are you planning to develop specific tools, or which kind of tools do you think could be more effective to get this kind of information and measures that could support, of course, the effect, the impact of self-regulated learning?
I'm gonna actually let Chad take this one.
Sure. So we have been working at Float in conjunction with QIC for the last couple of years on a project for the United States Department of Defense. And that application is available at adl.net, or sorry, adlnet.gov. And it's
Okay.
called PEARLS, PERLS, and it is a self-regulated learning system with adaptive content delivery and a recommendation engine in there, where the user does set out on a journey. They create their own learning path. They indicate the topics that they are interested in, and then they are doled out the content on a schedule based off of their engagement pattern, how often they go into the application, how they consume that content, meaning do they read it frequently? Are they going deep into the subject matter? And then how do they perform on the assessments? So we make sure that the content that is delivered to them is done on a schedule that fits along with their consumption patterns, making sure that they're getting the most appropriate content as they need it, right? So it's a blend of ahead of time learning as well as potentially could be used for performance support or just in time learning. But the basic concept is we don't want to drill and kill them with too much unnecessary information. So if they test out of the content, they can move ahead forward through it, hopefully increasing their motivation to continue through that content. But they can also see how they're charting against that goal and that pattern. So there are research opportunities that are available. Again, this is at adlnet.gov. And if you just look for the project's PEARLS there, you'll be able to find it. There's a number of white papers that are published. There's videos on the product. There's presentation media that's available, all free of charge. You can just take a look at that. And if you're interested in engaging with that product or project, you should contact the folks at ADL. I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing your inquiries and interest into their research. The backbone of all of that, though, is based off of this concept that they have called the total learner architecture, which charts the learner's progress from basically a very droll or terrible cliche is from cradle to grave, basically from the beginning of their engagement with the system or the measurement and metrics analytics platform that they are until they retire, essentially, until they choose no longer to engage with the system. And this takes the form of a lot of different learning avenues and paths, but it's all buttoned up together with the Experience API or XAPI, which is a universal form of engagements analytics that can be inserted not just in the learning activities, but also into real world activities. So if I learned how to, say, for example, produce this particular music, and I did it through going through this series of lessons, that training instance could be instrumented with XAPI, but then also my performance tool itself could be instrumented with that XAPI. Did I do this the way that the training said that I should? And you see this used very frequently now in advanced simulators, but they can also instrument the actual product that you buy or use on the marketplace as well. So from the concept of SRL, like you could have theoretically, if a product stack existed, which doesn't really quite exist yet, that took you from the very beginning of preparation all the way through the appraisal in not just the learning environment, but also the real world environment, you would have essentially kind of that perfect match, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, let's keep in touch because we are very much interested in this kind of research, and we really would like to have a possible cooperation on these kind of subjects, on the assessment of the impact of SRL in particular. So thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much, Chad. It was really great to have you on this session. And we are going to introduce Luca Torres' presentation, but I'll wait just a couple of minutes, Luca, to be perfectly on time, allowing people to enter the session. Yeah, I'm monitoring the chat. I know that the program has certain rules, so I let people
respect the rules,
Yeah, we have to.
Okay.
So
No
what a nice setting you are in.
Yes, I'm happy to be here because
Yeah.
I want to show you our conference room.
Yeah.
This conference room is very beautiful, you know, for us. And this is a shed. This shed was built in 1904. Yes, more than a century. And within this shed, we regenerate all this area, and now we have new build inside this
So that
this area, and you know, it's very our best, probably best shed in the city, and I'd like
absolutely,
to
in
present
fact, it's
from here.
that's a very, very good idea to show, you know, actually where you are in and what is
We have some problem with the air
physically.
conditioning. I hope someone solved the problem because it's very hot today in
It's
Reggio
very
Emilia.
hot. I can imagine that. I can imagine that. Yes, that is a very hot area. But it's nice that we can actually see the physical place where this project has been realized, and that's the project you're going to talk about and that I will introduce in a minute. So
We'll let you guys get organized. But thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Thank
Jen.
you
Thank you
so
Bye.
very
much,
much.
Jennifer and
Bye. Have a great
Chad.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, okay. The presentation is going, I think. Introduction to you. Wow. Here we are. So, welcome everyone to this session. I think we are perfectly on time, so I can start my introduction to Luca Torri's presentation about humanities in technology. That's another crucial topic that we are going to develop and deepen over this conference. And I'm very much pleased and honored to have Luca Torri with us. I will tell you about his profile, which is worth mentioning, I think, especially because we talk about innovation, we talk about new learning ideas, and Luca Torri, who is CEO at Stu Reggiane SPA, he based his experience on organizational learning and semantic knowledge management. Working in this field, he had the opportunity to interact with companies, universities, and research centers. He was a founding partner of eLand, a company based in Reggio Emilia, which offers information systems for knowledge management based on semantic approach. In the past, he led technological innovation project in the public administration and was a consultant for new technologies for private companies. Being convinced that widespread innovation is achieved through interinstitutional cooperation, and we really much agree on that, with that, and that local systems must come together to create stable networks of relationships to seize the opportunities of the new market, he has promoted several technological innovation actions at national level. From 2014, he managed the Stu Reggiane corporate organization, a public-private company which aims to rebuild an historical industrial site of the city of Reggio Emilia, and you have actually the opportunity to visit this place today because Luca is connected from there. To make it again a place where innovation and knowledge work together. Stu Reggiane is now developing and boosting the Reggiane Parco Innovazione, Reggiane Innovation Park, a new European hub at the service of businesses and research. Currently made up of Reggio Emilia Technopole, a technical hub for industrial research and technology transfer, Loris Maraguzzi International Center, the research laboratory of education system in Reggio Emilia, and many innovation companies. The park is to play a pivotal role in the development of the local area based on the knowledge economy, the place where the area's hallmark skills are concentrated and in which the system of innovation created thanks to the interaction between the public administration, businesses, and research become more organic and effective. So it was worth spending some time describing the important activity that Luca Tori is carrying out in this specific area in Italy, because this is the actual realization of a different way of interpreting technology and technological development in a true area, in a true sense, in the way inclusion and true development can be carried out. So he will talk about artificial intelligence, the use that we need to have about artificial intelligence that will lead to a new technological world. That's for sure. But of course, it is also true that different risks are matched with the development of artificial intelligence. There's a risk that is no longer based on the lack of information access, but on the inability to manage and understand the digital world. So that's why humanities should always be linked to a new interpretation of technology. I think that I spoke too much and that it's time to leave the floor to Luca, that will tell us about, first of all, the example, the reality that is a real center for excellence all over Italy. And of course, about this new way of interpreting technology, artificial intelligence, and development. So thank you for being with us, Luca. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Antonella. If you agree, I talk about this place at the end of my presentation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
No. I like to start with other things. I want to first of all thanks the Learning Idea Conference for give me this opportunity, and thanks also Professor Antonella Poce, because we started a collaboration, and I'm happy to be here to present even this situation. So other two words about my, I'm sorry, I start the presentation. Okay. Antonella, please, do you see my screen, the presentation?
Sorry, I turned off the mic. Yes, absolutely, it's perfect, yes.
Good, thanks a lot. So other two words about my experience, because, you know, I used to be a technician and a consultant for more than 20 years. I was a consultant in organizational learning and knowledge management. Then I started the company, but you know, almost all my life was you know, in the IT sector. And since 2014, I'm the CEO of the Innovation Park in Reggio Emilia, and I'm very excited for this week.
I don't know if we lost Luca. I think something happened to the connection. Can you hear him, or is just me? We can't hear him either. Okay, I see. I'll try to contact him. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's just.
I'm really sorry.
Here you are. Here you are.
We got a problem.
Something happened. Yeah.
Something happened with the network. Okay.
Yeah, it must be the connection, but we can hear you at least. So.
Okay. Okay. You know, today about these things, I I got a proposal in mind. So we all know that in creating
Luca, your mic is off.
now, it's okay.
Now it's fine. Yes. Great.
I don't know.
No, it's
okay. I'll restart. You know, we all know that in creating a brand new technological world, artificial intelligence brings with it a strong risk of producing an environment where people may be unable to understand the digital world and to manage it. This will create a new kind of digital gap. So I have to share again. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe it's all correct. Okay. Okay, this new world we create a new kind of digital gap. You know, while in the past 2 decades, information was difficult to gather, and therefore only those who had access to it had decision-making power. Tomorrow we'll have an excess of information, but as a paradox, even less decision-making power. We all have the illusion to be able to have access to everything today, and that this alone will improve our lives. The risk of overconfidence in this new scenario, attracted by digital honeypots, people could embrace technology without understanding it, thereby giving up social control and management of technological impact. Indeed, only a few big names in technology sector will end up knowing how information, preference, and personal data are gathered and combined. Only those who are able to control this incredible amount of data will know how to manage them, leaving the final user, us, with no knowledge of processes and therefore no understanding of it. This is the real problem and may have devastating consequences of our lives. For that, I will provide some disturbing example later on. Okay. So the challenge now is to be able to handle this technological impact without creating a new form of distance with and among people. We have to understand the boundaries of this technological world and whether and how it can and will be worthwhile or not for people. Not just useful or harmless, but worthwhile. And this is the key topic. The impact of technology improvement, but was always disruptive in all societies in the past and also in the present in many countries. But I think we have learned a lesson, and we know we need to ask some questions in advance and avoid negative consequences as much as possible. It's a matter of turning a challenge and a possible crisis into an opportunity of growth and improvement. At the same time, this approach might be an added value to technological progress, thus improving it. Okay, without going too far, talking about privacy, cybersecurity, and so on, let's just think of some consequences of technological progresses. And in this case, we have focuses, of course, on artificial intelligence that we need to take. Okay, if we think of energy sector, artificial intelligence use raises some issues, positive and negative. The more artificial intelligence we rely on, the more energy we need to feed data center and so on. So artificial intelligence causes pollution. General services on the web, especially with AI, are energy intensive. In current years, we talk a lot about electric vehicles, but not about the electricity consumption of the data centers. For example, the Bitcoin system uses more energy than the entire Netherlands, twice as much as Israel. If the web were a nation, it would be the fourth producer of carbon dioxide in the world. Again, in the UK, a study confirmed that useless email produces the same CO2 of more than 3,000 diesel cars. And we have to think about Instagram. Every day, more than half billion people access the social network and post pictures. So are we sure that Instagram is carbon free? How many data centers do we have to feed to store the quantity of data? Has anyone ever questioned you about uploading a photo of your children? Probably not, but in that case, be aware that you're leaving a clear carbon footprint. Well, with AI, we will expand the web and the data centers, and we have to deal with this problem. Speaking of electric cars, yes, their use reduce pollution, but it's only with autonomous driving through artificial intelligence that we can avoid consumers' misuse of resources and negative drivers' habits in order to maximize the impact of electric mobility. The use of renewable sources to produce energy is essential nowadays, but to make it really efficient and manage the production use ratio, artificial intelligence is fundamental. So artificial intelligence will sooner or later be part of each aspect of our lives. But where is the limit? To which extent are we ready or willing to accept its role? Now, you will excuse me, but it's the time for that disturbing example I anticipated to you. Okay, the example is this. Imagine two cars in a mountain road, opposite direction. In one car, two elderly people with a grandchild. In the other, a young couple. The young woman expecting a child. She's pregnant. In one car, a tire blows, and there will be a collision. And this collision cannot be avoided, no matter how. It's artificial intelligence that decides. So who's gonna die? The question is, who's gonna die? So can we allow an algorithm to decide something like that? Who is actually deciding? Artificial intelligence will replacing God or the fate. You know, this is an ethical question, and maybe it could be seen in different ways in different countries. Is the algorithm different from country to country? What happens if I cross a border? Will the algorithm change while artificial intelligence is driving my car? We will have in our future an electronic voice that informs us with a message like, you've just crossed the border of the state of Canada, so the system switches to something. You know, I'm sure today we are not close to this situation. We still have time to take advantage of that. But technology today can still be controlled. The idea that artificial intelligence is replacing humans is overrated, in my opinion. But for example, with quantum computers, the situation will be very different. We might not be able to control it anymore. Quantum computing will create new scenarios, and if they get the floor, research orientation will be polarized from the engineering side and towards the technological approach alone. Because technology is led by people who have faith only in technology itself and speak only tech languages. So who produced this technology? Are we as citizen or professional, public institution, private enterprise, entrusting technology with this task without ethical support? AI is, for now, and will be for a long time, a black box, because the value lies in the construction of the algorithm, which, if revealed, make those who created it lose power and money. I think that algorithms which deal with ethics problem must be open. You know, I want to know how they have been developed. For example, let's think of the kind of data present in databases using support processes of AI. We have to focus on a couple of problems. At company levels, AI works only when a huge amount of data, only if a huge amount of data is available. And this is possible in the case of industry 4.0 application, because, you know, indeed machines produce a lot of data. But for other industrial application, this might not happen. So we might need data from many different companies to train algorithms, and these algorithms in that case will tend to flatten. The second, learning transfer is also complicated. An algorithm which happens to be perfect for a certain domain might well be useless or inaccurate when used in other applications. Human beings are excellent at transposing interpretation model, machines are not. And AI is a special purpose intelligence, so human intelligence is a general purpose one. Okay, if we think of more general algorithms, we should ask ourselves, where do this data come from? Privacy and discrimination are at stake here. Okay, I don't want to be only negative or pessimistic. I'm aware about the benefits of the AI. I'm a former technologist, and I do know how AI could improve our lives. But starting from now, we have to look at this innovation at 360 degrees.
Luca, sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yes.
don't know if you are turning the slides or not, because we are always on the same, some
You
issues.
are okay.
So, yes.
No. It's the same. It's the
You were
same.
anyway here.
CCC.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
We are.
No, I just
It's the right-
wanted
it's
to
the right
be
slide.
sure because
No. I made a few slides, and you know.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, in general, my question is: can we find a way to tackle the issues I mentioned? I think yes, and it is humanity in technology. So those who are experts in human science should help develop artificial intelligence. Not just set limits and restriction in their different fields or of activities, statutory regulation, laws, laws, and so on. We need cooperative and combined approach, an alternative model to produce artificial intelligence together. And how we deal with artificial intelligence will shape the world we will live in. So it becomes pivotal to develop artificial intelligence, not only with a technological focus, but with a human-oriented focus. Technology is never neutral. We can take it at face value. Its value depends on how it is developed. And sorry?
No, sorry, there must be some mic on. Okay. Sorry, Luca, please.
I don't understand.
No, that's fine. Yes, absolutely. No, there was a mic on, but I turned it off. Please.
Okay. To have a positive impact on society and make our lives better, technology must be ethical, transparent, and inclusive. We must think ahead and shape the way artificial intelligence will be used to solve problems, and we are not even aware of at the moment. All actions implemented today by institutions or through the collaboration between companies, university, and public administration are not yet aimed at building an overall vision of the problem, and usually tend to consider only a small part of the issue, thereby generating micro solutions for macro problems that become therefore irrelevant. What is missing is a systemic approach capable of taking into account a plurality of factors as education, sustainability, people needs, privacy, and generate the vision of the future. The scenario we have in front of us is rich and to some extent stimulating. I'm very happy to participate in this journey in this historical period, but at the same time, I can see how this path is too disjointed and the approach too fragmented to represent an effective response to the needs of people and communities. Efforts today are mainly focused on one and sole goal: making the world of AI richer, more accessible for everyone, and with increasingly useful services. But so we are still focusing our attention only on the production side. Technologists and the researchers are convinced that by making the production of AI-oriented services more consistent with the needs of citizens, it is possible to provide effective response to people's needs. But you know, the more we move forward with the customization of services and systems, the more we are unable to see the overall frame. So we risk creating complex but top-down prepackaged services. This will indeed lead us to advanced technological services disconnected from the environment, for our communities and for people. Okay, let's see another example of how technology can get out of hand if not oriented correctly. The World Wide Web project was presented at the CERN by Tim Berners-Lee as a content network connected also from a cognitive point of view. The indexing giants like Google turned the web into a network with few connections. Without Google or other search engine, it is basically impossible to use the web. Tim Berners-Lee says he regrets his creation and is working on the solid project, a network connected by linked object data and with the ability to manage data with the highest level of privacy. This example brings to the surface a real issue, the governance of the platform. And it is quite clear that technology governance cannot be established because it should have a worldwide dimension. But I hope in the future we will be able to ensure a sort of organizational learning of the web. And probably this is a dream, but I want to keep, this guideline always in my mind. Because we're not simply facing that technologically challenge. The true challenge is to build a meaning around artificial intelligence. So everyone, citizen, companies and institutions must be aware of the deep meaning that the use of these tools can assume of their advantage, but also their problems. This can be done with the help of educational and training science, with psychology, philosophy, sociology, the arts in general, which can build the bridges between research, industry, and society. Alongside the huge investment in digital technology, it is therefore essential to invest in the development of critical thinking that encourages an overall rethinking of the social role of technology, hybrid thinking that brings balance between divergent ones, the technological culture and the humanistic culture. Okay, but how we can combine technological factor with humanistic one? Okay, now let me tell you a little story about a particular city of the north of Italy that I hope will inspire us to embrace this approach. Okay, the story is the story of Reggio Emilia. Reggio Emilia is located in the northern part of Italy, at the heart of the Motor Valley and the Food Valley. It is a part of Emilia-Romagna region and one of the more productive and prosperous regions in Italy. Reggio Emilia is commonly defined as a city of innovators by tradition. It is an industrious and inventive community with a natural predisposition for international relation and dialogue. To achieve its goals and adapt to changes and progress, Reggio Emilia has leveraged an important values like community, human-centered approach, and cooperation. A reference to this value will help you to understand how we are able to keep economy, technology, and humanity all together through a strong sense of responsibility and commitment. Meeting together for the same purposes and sharing values. It was not easy, and still not easy, having to face continuous changes and new challenges. In the official logo of the city, you'll find that Reggio Emilia is the city of people. What does that mean? That innovation, strategies, growth, and development should involve and give voices to Reggio Emilia's citizens. A sense of community, indeed, has always been at the basis of the city identity. This shaped Reggio as the city of social capital. We keep working to build a participatory and inclusive city without barriers, where citizens can feel like protagonists and collaborate in the protection of the common good. Welfare policy and good quality of service have given safety, cohesion, and recognizability of the city. This model is based on a strong public sector with a high level of integration with the third sector. And it is also based on innovation thanks to investment in professional skill and awareness of citizens. Reggio Emilia is also known as the city of cooperation because of the long history of cooperative movement and the number of cooperatives still present in the city. We have to go back to the second half of the 19th century to find the first example of cooperation and social services provided by mutual aid society as a response to the economic and social needs of working classes. At first, consumer association, as well as production and labor cooperatives were created. From the early 28th century to the present, cooperation has developed in new sectors, always following the 8 founding principles. Innovation by tradition, one vote for person, mutual help nurture, no speculation, solidarity between cooperatives, and mutuality outside the cooperatives. In short, individuals come together because they have the same purpose. The cooperative spirit has been able to guarantee and maintain over the years a strong social cohesion and a fair distribution of well-being. The cooperative movement always look forward, deeply rooted in the community and constantly innovating. Cooperation in Reggio Emilia has met the spirit of its community, oriented towards doing together and facing even the most difficult moments without renouncing at shared well-being. From the 70s, new cooperatives were created in sectors like culture, education, the environment, and social service, strengthening collective values and rights. Today, new challenges are faced, and so we have community cooperatives to valorize small villages in decline and to improve life conditions for their inhabitants, or worker buyouts, which mean that employees of a bankrupt enterprise form a cooperative and take over the business. This is an alternative model for development that Reggio Emilia continues to spread. Speaking of skills and craft, today to be competitive, the city decided to embrace innovation, not only from a technological point of view, but above all from an intellectual point of view. Indeed, we are working at the transition from the Emilian model based on know-how, efficiency, trusted skill and crafts, ability to do and to manufacture, into a more dynamic Emilian European model. The latter focuses on creativity and research, on cognitive and relational skills, and on cultural approaches in order to compete in the new knowledge society. In our view, innovation must combine technological development with humanistic knowledge and social innovation. Okay, and to these ideas of identity and innovation, we add our way of life, our lifestyle that focuses on individuals and communities, on responsible protagonists, on sustainability, cultural work and quality, creativity and being together. Okay, the city is also is the city of urban regeneration. One of the most important examples is the Innovation Park. Here we are in the Reggiani Innovation Park. The realization of this park consists of the urban and infrastructure regeneration and development of a huge abandoned industrial area where the mechanical factory of Officine Meccaniche Reggiane was once located. It is a cultural and historical memory recovery project in a district that was central to the economic and social development of the city throughout the first half of the 20th century. From the Officine Meccaniche Reggiane to the Innovation Park, the city has managed to build a history of resilience and innovation, but by reshaping the past in order to build an innovative future. The Reggiane, created in 1904, had indeed to constantly adapt and innovative its production and process for keeping up with the market as well as the changes of society. We could have decided to buy this area, dismiss all the historical buildings, and build new premises from scratch. And it would be easier, cheaper and easier, and believe me, less stressful. On the contrary, we decided not to build a nice modern complex that would easily turn into a cathedral in the desert, but to regenerate the past to build the future. Okay, to do this, the city decided to start a participatory and shared process with all relevant stakeholders to connect the construction on the park with the strategic vision of the territory. Okay. Another important point of our city. We are the city of education. It's very important for us because you know we are known in the entire world for this experience, the Reggio Emilia approach. And the first preschool in Reggio Emilia was opened in 2062 by a charitable financial institution for those living in poor condition. In the 1913, the municipality of Reggio Emilia opened the first municipal preschool that then closed by the fascist regime. But after the Second World War, the Italian Women's Unions opened 60 preschools managed by the union itself in the province of Reggio Emilia and built on the basis of participation. A specific example, in 1945, selling a German abandoned tank, 6 horses and 3 trucks, the inhabitants of Villa Gaida, that is a local neighborhood, built a school for local children. And they said, we build the wall, of this school together, men and women, because we want it to be new and different for all children. So participation is a cultural and social legacy that still characterize our educational system. In the 60s, Reggio Emilia set up its own network of preschool services and educational content and forms of organization were defined by the administration together with parents and teachers. In the 1971, the municipality, together with Loris Malaguzzi, who was pedagogical coordinator of the city's new early childhood services, introduced Infant Toddler Center 403. By investing in education from an early age, the city invests in people and their ability to become active citizens, and therefore a first asset of innovation for a community. Okay, in 1991, Diana Municipal Preschool, an example of Reggio Emilia infant toddler centers and preschool, were presented by Newsweek as the most advanced in the world for early childhood education. In these schools, a particular education approach was applied, developed by Loris Malaguzzi. An educational philosophy based on the idea that children and human beings possess strong potential for development since the early years, and they are full of curiosity and imagination and have the right to find connection and meanings in all the experience. To promote this educational philosophy, namely the Reggio Emilia approach, Reggio Children International Center for the Defense and Promotion was created in 1994 by the municipality with the support of local citizens. Later, the Fondazione Reggio Emilia was established in the Loris Malaguzzi International Center to promote international quality through research. Every year, the center hosts more than 110,000 visitors. Of them, at least 5,000 are teachers, educators, researchers from over the world. The international centers is located in a former cheese factory, because here we do things like that, and this is part of the Reggiane Innovation Park. So Reggio Emilia is an artistic community where politics and administration give people the chance to have a quality of life, to work to improve themselves and their society. One of the most important characteristics of the city is the industriousness of its citizens, together with the value of the work. Therefore, let me end this second part of my speech with the sentence of our garden, our professor in the Harvard Business Review said, my favorite example of a ethic community is a small city called Reggio Emilia in the north of Italy. Children feel that the community is taking care of them. So when they grow up, they give back this nurture by taking care of others. They become good workers and good citizens. So That's the sentence of our garden. Okay. And now I want to move to the final stage of my speech, namely the proposal. Yes, because I think we can launch today a proposal because we have an economic and cultural challenge await us in our next near future. And the protagonist of the next few years will have to rebuild the foundation of the economic and social community with new forms of action and collaboration. Humanity and technology represent an important first step to redesign not only educational and cultural process, but also the structure of business by combining knowledge, behavior, and technological knowledge. The same approach I described, hoping to inspire you, should guide us to deeply root artificial intelligence, but in general, the technological world into the real world. We have to follow the sense of community, the sense of identity, this participation, the beauty, and the ethics. Just like we were able to deeply root our growth, know-how, and distinctive competencies. So my proposal is to bring together professionals in different fields to define topics, issues, questions, to discuss and find common solutions and approaches. The question is if with this proposal we can make some difference. So we can build an alternative model, respect a human-oriented artificial intelligence with our sense with humanity. I really think we can make the difference to a cooperative approach based on education to complexity. Humanists who lead technologies to contribute to the construction of a new way of thinking in a new educational approach. And how can we create a new world in AI accordingly to this alternative model? I think it is possible through ethics, awareness, and sympathy. Yes, because we always think and talk about ethics and awareness, but we don't talk about the sympathy. And the sympathy is usually missing in all technologically projects. So I'm very at the end of my speech. So my suggestion is to start a project together to implement a new project to try to put the humanistic part in technological part. And we think we are the right place to start this project because our DNA, because our experience, and because our sense of community and innovation that we have here in Italy.
Thank you so much, Luca. It was absolutely inspiring, and I think that the model of the Reggio Emilia community, the way in which innovation and education is considered, is really a reference for all of us, and it could be a model for all of us. So there are different congratulations in the chat. Just to break the ice, as we say, to wait for questions from the audience. I wanted to ask you something. Of course, as you said, we need to have a critical use of technology in order to avoid certain risks, even if we can't live without technology. It's part of our lives, and we need to take advantage of that. So, do you think, and which is your opinion anyway, on the role of digital education, and which aspects should be more taken into consideration by educators, researchers, our community in this sense? The people that are attending our session, of course, are very much involved in that. So which is your opinion on how to develop and how to cooperate? You represent the corporate area. In my case, I represent university or higher education. Anyway, how can we work and support a proper, let's say, useful digital education?
So I think that the education have to integrate digital skill of the next future, the digital skill of the AE, starting from the 06. It's important for me to start to have a new form of education starting from the preschool, the infant toddler school, because you know, every process of social and digital innovation must go through education. This is the first point. So education is the key concept for the development of a conscious digital community. And it is the enabling factor to increase cognitive and social skill. And the school is the right place to start a new idea of a learning community in the digital world. So this is more or less my thought, because I think it is important to start from 06, because it is important to have in our future people that have experienced from the early school this digital world, you know.
Yes, so this is perfectly in line with also the previous presentation on self-regulated learning. This need to have children reflect on what they are doing and on what they learn, you know, through the process of learning, and in this case, digital skills education. So there's a question in the Q&A session for you, and it's from Maria Rosaria Re, who is asking, what are the strengths and weaknesses of Stu Reggiane model for university students?
For university students,
Yeah.
we have, I don't know the question, because Stu Reggiane is a company that had to build the innovation park, and the relation with the university is
maybe
for
the question is related to the relation that you think possible within this model of a community, of a learning community that actually you build through the innovation park and the involvement of different institutions, but not only. Anyway, as you said, everyone in the local community is some way participating in this innovation park. So what is the question was addressed to understand if there's which are the points of view in relation to the possible cooperation within this model between the innovation park and higher education.
Yeah, I didn't talk about higher education because I think is we have a lot of connection with the University of Reggio Emilia, and here in the innovation part we'll have two courses of Unimore, and it is normal for us to collaborate with the university. And I think it is that the simple part for me, because with the university we have a lot of connection, a lot of relationship. We have few connection with companies and with the early school. Yes, we have here in Reggio Emilia the Fondazione Reggio Emilia and the Infant Toddler School 06, but we have to enlarge our relationship with all the level of the school before the university.
Okay, yes, Maria Rosaria confirms that that was a question about. So thank you so much, Luca. I think we ran out of time, but of course you are. Actually, I'm speaking for you, but I think you are available for further questions by the audience, and we all will be here also later on and tomorrow with a very interesting panel on critical thinking and other interesting sessions. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to you, to all.
And yes, everyone is thanking you, and thanks to all the participating audience. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.